Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jeff and Nick Show. This is episode 3. I'm Nick, and I'm here with Jeff. Today, we're going to be discussing the Charlie Sheen 3. We've got Major League 1, Major League 2, and 8 Men Out.
All right. The old Charlie Sheen, Mr. Tiger's blood. He's got tiger's blood in him himself.
Tiger's blood in him himself, yeah. Before we start our next 3 movies, we're going to recap episode 2. Jeff, you want to hit us with what we talked about in episode 2?
Yeah, we did the old Costner 3, Field of Dreams, Bull Durham, and For Love of the Game. I know Bull Durham, one of your favorites. I think we had a kind of disagreement on that one. And I went back and watched it. I thought it was a little overrated. I think we both love Field of Dreams. That's just a classic movie. We talked about that, and just kind of the tenderness and the kind of the love of baseball that you really feel in that one. And then For Love of the Game, an older Costner movie, kind of detailing his last day of pitching in the majors, intertwined with the love story with the Kelly Preston character, him throwing the perfect game in that game. Spoiler alert, but if you haven't watched it. So yeah, it's good talk, good conversation. I thought thought we had a pretty good conversation last week. Hoping to continue that today with the 3 Charlie Sheen movies.
Rest in peace, Kelly Preston. One of the things, so we are introducing Mound Visits. It is our segment where we go over any mistakes, anything that we noticed after rewatching last week's episode. In Field of Dreams, we had said his glove is a place where triples go to die. And people had said that was about Shoeless Joe, but it was really about Tris Speaker and later Willie Mays. Willie Mays was one of those center fielders who played very shallow. And we'll even discuss that 1954 catch when we're going back at Major League 2. The soundtrack in Field of Dreams, I had mentioned that it was the Doobie Brothers song that I really like, but it's Jessica by the Allman Brothers. So Doobie Brothers and the Allman Brothers make an appearance on that soundtrack. Did you have anything from Field of Dreams? And the other thing was that I forgot to mention was that Shoeless Joe was who Babe Ruth modeled his swing after.
Yeah.
And that was something in that movie that I never picked up on until I continuously watched that movie. When they're laying there in bed, and did you know Babe Ruth modeled this swing after him? And it's like, if I knew, I didn't really realize it.
Yeah, the one that I saw that I noticed after looking back, listening back to us, is that the Godfather, the scene where they first meet Moonlight Graham, kind of go in that time warp where Kevin Costner meets him. It was 1972, not 1973. Godfather was 1972, and I'm pretty sure the license plate, when he scratched it off, it said 72. So that was the only thing that I noticed that were a little bit the things that we just we missed on just by a little.
Yeah. In Bull Durham, the Brown-Eyed Handsome Man was written and performed by Chuck Berry in 1956, and so that was part of the inspiration to Center Field by John Fogerty, aside from what we had mentioned last week with his beginnings in baseball. There was no disagreement. It's a difference of opinion, which makes stuff like this great.
Yeah.
And For Love of the Game, we had talked about Vin Scully doing Yankee games, and I had mentioned that the only time that he had ever called a Yankee game was when the Yankees were playing the Dodgers, and up until interleague play had began, they didn't play each other as often, and the Dodgers and the Yankees played each other a fair amount in the World Series. But one thing I found while doing a little bit of research was in 1964, the Yankees got rid of Mel Allen, and the person in their broadcast operations had reached out to Vin, and this was in 1964, and they had asked if Vin Scully wanted to become the voice of the Yankees, and of course he turned it down. Mm-hmm. After becoming settled in Los Angeles and having begun just such a interpersonal relationship with the people of Southern California, with the Dodgers. But one thing I read in that Pull Up a Chair book was when he moved to LA, he was living in the same apartment building as John Wooden.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Wow. Imagine that. Imagine being a fly on the wall for their conversations, man. Wow.
That was awesome. He also did call Home Run 715 by Hank Aaron. And the reason that he stopped calling football games was CBS withdrew their promise to have him call the Super Bowl in 1982, and then he rejected their 10-year offer following that. So I didn't know that. I'm happy that I went down that rabbit hole to research one of my favorite broadcasters of all time, and just to see, what went into that, because of course we're both big 49er fans, and having that catch replayed and hearing so many voices, but wanting to hear his call on it because it's such a soft and soothing voice to that play. Montana rolls out and there's Clark leaping in the end zone. For me, having that as part of the 49ers history is huge.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. He has an iconic voice, iconic calls. It would have been quite a different world we live in if he went to the Yankees and he did accept that offer. It would be interesting to see what would have happened. Another time, another dimension. Maybe he did that. Alternate reality.
Alternate reality, multiverse.
Yeah, multiverse, exactly.
All right, let's get started. We're gonna start with Major League One. We're gonna go on to the second Major League movie, and then we're gonna finish with 8 Men Out.
All right, let's do it.
Major League One, released in 1989. There were a couple things in this movie that kind of stood out to me, especially in the beginning, where you go through the history of the Cleveland Indians, and they had made the World Series in '54. The last time they won was in 1948, and then how bad they were over the course of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and at this movie is released in the tail end of the 80s.
Yeah.
Listening to the owner talk about the size of the stadium they were going to build in Miami, it was 62,000 seats with 45 VIP boxes. Cleveland Stadium had a capacity of almost 80,000, which made no sense to me when you're going to go to Miami for a brand new stadium. But of course, she lets the cat out of the bag where she says, you know how much I despise Cleveland and Ohio. So, for me, that was kind of funny. Dodger Stadium holds 56,000. It's the largest baseball capacity stadium in Major League Baseball. Oakland can hold 63,000, but who knows when the last time that they filled that many seats.
Yeah, they tarped up the top deck back in, I think, I want to say 2006, 7, 8, somewhere around there. So yeah, they don't have that. They're opening Mount Davis this weekend, actually, for the A's Giants series. Actually, I just read that this morning, but they haven't done that in 13 years. So yeah.
All right, Jeff, what do you think of Major League One?
Major League One. So actually, first, are we referring to them as the Indians? I don't want to.
That's what they were. That's what they were in the movie.
In this context, so right?
Yeah.
So I want to point out, though, the very first shot, I don't know if you noticed, was of the Guardians. The very first shot of the movie is the Guardian right there. Is what so if you know they're Guardians now, and what the Guardians are, they're on the bridge and they watch over the waters, I guess. So the very first shot is of that Guardian. So I noticed that right off the bat. I was like, oh hey, look, that's those Guardians. So I thought that was really kind of cool, and it kind of tied in today and how they got their name. And that really just shows how how iconic and how important that those statues and that name is to that area. So yes, but I think for these purposes, if we please don't get mad at us, or if we refer to them as the Indians, because the movie is about the Cleveland Indians at that time. So if we're referring to them, please, that's just the reason we're doing that.
They haven't taken these movies off the docket either, so it's not like they're doing anything. It's not like Mrs. Doubtfire where it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. Major League, one of my all-time favorite baseball movie. This is number one for me. It's got everything. It's got humor. It's got drama. It's got tender moments. It's just it reminds me of. It takes me back to sitting back in the apartment with my mom. I lived with my dad, so I go see my mom on the weekends, and we would rent movies. And when there's nothing to watch, we'd always get Major League. I loved it. I mean, it's highly inappropriate probably for what came out in 89. So I was 10. So I was like 10, 11, 12, but no nudity. So that's fine, I guess. But, I just remember watching it, and we would watch it all the time. I love it. I love the movie. I still get the chills at the end. I've seen it so many times. I can recite almost the whole movie. There's multiple times where I get chills and the goosebumps. So love that movie. One of my all-time favorites. Yeah, we got a lot of things to go on. I got a lot of notes here. It's just so funny. Starting at the beginning, I don't know if you noticed. Were you a big Scrubs fan? I don't know if you noticed. Have you
I
ever watched
love,
that
yeah,
show? You noticed the janitor?
Jan Etor.
Yeah. You
Jan
notice
Etor.
the janitor was one of those guys. One of those dudes in the these guys don't look so fucking good. He's one of those guys. I don't know if we're allowed to swear here or not. Sorry, but he's one of the janitor from Scrubs. First thing I noticed there, I was like, oh, I feel like I remembered that, but forgot. So I thought that was always cool. Yeah. What's your take on it? Where does this rank for you? Or
This
where
is
does it
definitely
fall?
top. This is definitely in the top five. 4 and 5 are kind of going to be definitely interchangeable. This one, it's it's been a while since I watched it, and it's definitely one of those really good movies. I love Charlie Sheen. Loved him in Hot Shots. This was totally an '80s movie. Haircut, cast. I mean, look at the cast. You had Wesley Snipes, Tom Berenger, Corbin Burnson, Rene Russo, and Mr. Allstate Insurance Man
That's
himself,
right.
Dennis Haysbert as Pedro Serrano. Um, a lot of the stuff in this movie, it's timeless. It's hilarious when
Rene
Dorn is
Russo.
talking.
Rene Russo too. Did you say Rene Russo? Yeah, I
I
forget about her. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope I did because she's on my list. When Roger Dorns goes up to Lou, the manager, and he's like, "This isn't in my contract. I don't have to do extra calisthenics." And Lou takes the contract and he pees on it. And it's like, okay, cool. What soundbite are they using
Yeah.
to imitate pee? Are they like pouring water on a piece of paper? You could definitely tell that was that cheesy '80s moment.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that the reason that I'm wearing this shirt is so before the first game of the year, Jake Taylor, he goes to Cleveland Stadium. He's like, oh, bottom of the ninth, 2 men out, winning run on second base. Taylor calls his shot.
Mm-hmm. A
And then
little foreshadowing.
correct, and more foreshadowing. And then you forward to the end of the game and he calls his shot again. He gets knocked down. He doesn't dust himself off and he does it again. And then he gives that, half bunt with Willie on second, and that was great because from what we talked about with For Love of the Game, it kind of ties itself in where all that stuff plays a role, starting the season off against the Yankees and then ending the season in that 1 game playoff against the Yankees. That was hilarious. One thing that I did want to note about that is, Rick Vaughn's first appearance, 13 pitches, 3 walks, 1 home run, and then his next pitch, he hits a batter and gets tossed. Of course, some choice words there, and if this
So
was
good.
today, it would be John Boy chomping at the bit to find out
Oh
what he said
yeah.
as he's getting carried off.
Doing a breakdown and a lip
Yeah,
reading thing. Yeah.
that was great.
That would
That
be
was great.
um yeah, I just the intro I think is so great. And one thing I want to call out is when Willie Mays Hayes rolls up and that bug that's tricked out tricked out to be a Rolls Royce. I think he's got Rolls Royce decals on it. He put the thing on front, took the hood off of the bug, and put like a what do you call? I don't even know what they're even called. The more pointy hood of a Rolls Royce or Rolls Royce looking. Oh, that was pretty funny. That just cracks me up every time I see it. Like it's so Willie Mays Hayes to do that.
Say hey, he
And,
gets out of the car. Say
yeah,
hey, say
right.
hey.
Same, yeah. So funny, dude. And I always wondered why Dorn. Dorn. I love that character. He's so great in that, and such a prick in that movie. And but turns out to really spark the rally in the final game there. But why wasn't he DH? If he couldn't field, we're in the American League. Why is he not DHing? I mean, he dude hit 270 with I think they said 87 RBIs. I mean, hey, that's DH territory. If you can't field, then sit him and have him DH. I never understood
Right?
that why
I
he's
get that one too.
DHing. And
So
one thing I have always a question about getting to the last. Are we to really believe that Jake Taylor's the number 2 batter? I knew that from the very beginning when I saw this movie. I'm like, say Willie Mays Hayes is clearly the leadoff. So we're to believe that Jake Taylor, the slowest guy probably in the league with bad knees, 40 years old, is batting number 2. Even as a kid, I found that a little hard to believe. But I mean, I know it has to go with the story and all, but like if you look at it, I thought that was kind of funny. I don't think we're having many catchers batting number 2. 40-year-old catchers batting in the 2 hole. So
yeah,
I thought that
definitely
was
not in
interesting.
the '80s. That would be like 7, 8, 9 for
Yeah,
sure.
easily.
Um, so the guy that hit the home run off of Vaughn in the first game, Haywood, he had 2 at bats, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs against him. His average for the season was 341, 48 home runs, 121 RBIs.
Woo. Triple Crown.
Kevin Mitchell in 1989 playing for the Giants hit 291 with 47 home runs and 125 RBIs.
Wow.
The highest batting average was Barry Larkin's 342. So you
Wow.
kind of like take all those stats, jumble them together, throw a couple more in there for cinematic reasons. But I had to go down that hole again just to see it. And then, Vaughn's pitches were 97, 99, and 101 in that top of the ninth of that at bat. So I didn't get a chance to look at the average fastball for that time, but if memory serves correct, they weren't throwing in the hundreds at that time. Maybe Mitch Williams was topping out at 96,
Nolan
97,
Ryan, maybe. I don't even know Ryan was getting up there at that age.
Based on facing Nolan, based on that, I think that he was throwing, in the low hundreds, but who's to say? I don't know if radar guns were as easily accessible then as they are now. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Bob Uecker, we need to pause and talk about Bob Uecker, I think, because I mean that really he started this whole, you go to all these baseball movies we probably watch after that have a comedic edge to them, and I mean he really started this, funny guy commentary, and just nails everything, that every line and every delivery. Ball 4, ball 8, ball 12. How can these guys lay off pitches that close? Like they clearly see they're not anywhere near it. But if you think about it, you're listening at home. Oh yeah, it sounds. He's trying to. It's the home guy trying to make it sound good. So not only is it's just funny, it's also relatable because as a baseball fan, and you want to know that your team is at least competing, and he's trying to make it sound like that. So I just love Bob Uecker. He's so great. And I wrote down a few of his nicknames that he used instead of just calling them the Indians. So we've got the Wigwammers. I think he referred to the fans actually, and then the Erie Warriors, Lake Erie, Sons of Geronimo, the Tribe, obviously, and the Fighting Braves of the Cuyahoga. Those are just a few that I wrote down. So he's just great. Bob Uecker's the best. Is he still alive? Is he?
He is still alive. He's doing radio broadcasts for the Brewers. They have Uecker seats that are like $1 for the seat. I did like his little quirks that he would throw in. There was one about the guy on the Yankees where he's like, he leads the league in most offensive categories, and I think it was Haywood.
Yeah.
Including nose hair, and when he sneezes, he looks like a party favor. So for me, and then there was the Fanatic Featherheads, the Kings of the Cuyahoga. That was great.
Yeah.
But he definitely gave you that little bit of fun.
Yeah, the fun.
Yeah, that was great.
Fun in it. It was great. Yeah, it was really good. And I love the Jake Taylor character. I'm going to preface this. I realize that I'm not in the major leagues, not even close to the major leagues, barely played any baseball past, middle school. So I clearly understand that I'm not anywhere near even a fraction of a percent close to anybody of what they're doing. But I play, you played slow pitch softball. And as we get older, we're trying to leg these out, man. It's just harder and harder now. So, it was fun to see the old guy get the win there, do it for the team, do something that's not that everybody caught unexpected and really running one out. It was great. God, and my knees hurt now watching that when he falls at the end. Like I can feel that because I fall and hurt my knee. So I can feel that all over. It just looks brutal. But yeah, give it up to the old guy. The 40-year-old still busting their ass down the line. I love it because that's what I try to do. So.
Right? It's not easy. And I remember pulling a hamstring when I was playing with you, and I was like, oh man, he's never gonna ask me to play again. The soundtrack on this movie is mediocre at best for me. Randy Newman's noticeable early in the movie. Newman. And then you got, of course, the Wild song.
Was Burn On. I didn't really look into it, but I was like, what is this first song? It's called Burn On by Randy Newman. He did the other ones, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then Wild Thing, of course, is still played in a lot of ballparks as well. So yeah, I thought I forgot how good this movie is. I did some interviews with baseball fans when I went to San Diego, and I was asking, what's your favorite baseball movie? It's like Major League. That's it.
Yeah.
The cast is second to none. You don't get much better than that. So
that is true. It's and it's favorite. It's definitely my favorite. Is it the best? Probably not. But just in terms of favorite, you're asking me to rank it as my personal favorites. It's definitely number one. There's definitely better baseball, made movies, but yeah, for me it is Major League One. It's so good. Love it, love it, love it.
moving on to Major League Two. This movie was released 5 years later in '94.
Oof.
And one of the biggest differences that you see at the beginning of the movie is Omar Epps replaces Wesley Snipes.
Yes.
That was, of
Not
course,
cool.
5 years later, Wesley. Wesley was probably filming some B-grade movie with.
I think I want to say it was for some reason I want to say it was Passenger 57. I feel like I looked into this before. I should have done it again, but I want to say, or maybe he just wanted more money. It might be it too.
He was filming something with Sylvester Stallone too, right?
Oh, Demolition Man. Maybe it was Demolition
Probably.
Man then. I can see that.
Probably. What'd you think about Major League Two?
It's clearly inferior, but I'm here to defend it. I'm here to defend Major League Two. I haven't seen it in a while. I just remember it not being very good, but I am here to try it. I'm gonna try to defend it. How about that? Clearly, Omar Epps is not Wesley Snipes, not in any acting wise, comedic wise, or even athletic wise. Like he looked like he barely do anything. But I don't know if you watched. When's the last time you watched it? I watched it recently. I went and rented it. Got it from the library, so because I couldn't find it anywhere else. Oh no, that's right. You sent it to me on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube. That's right. 8 Men Out. I went and got from the library. But it has actually some pretty funny lines in it. He'll need a rocket up his ass to catch that from Bob Uecker. I mean, I say that to this day. Like I thought that was Major League One. That was from Major League Two. Like I say that all the time. Like at least 3 times a week between softball and watching baseball games. And then we used to say, I forgot, like when I heard this line, bust out the pooper scooper by Randy Quaid on one of his rants. We used to say that all the time. I'm like, that brought me back to my teenage years. And I mean, we used to say that all the time. And I haven't thought it or said that in so long, but that just brought me back. And then when Serrano, he's like, I am free and clear. And then Rick Vaughn, they say free and queer? Like that just made me laugh out loud. I don't know why. I know I'm a little juvenile there, but that just, I literally laughed out loud right there. So I think that had some pretty good, it had some funny parts. It definitely had some funny parts. There's a lot of things wrong with it. Not in terms of just not being as good, but just things that don't make sense. You know what I mean? So we're talking about, this is supposed to be the next year. And what I would have liked to seen is maybe this 3 years or 4 years, maybe follow the timeline of when the movie is made. It doesn't make sense to me coming back after 1 year, and then all of a sudden everybody's completely changed. Like you see a little bit of change, but Rick Vaughn said he's making 7 figures, so he can't be all crazy now. So I looked it up. So we're assuming the previous year, even Jake Taylor said he makes the league minimum. In 1989, the league minimum. So the league minimum in 1989 was 68,000. Okay. In 1990 is 100,000. So Rick Vaughn is not making 7 figures. You know what I mean? I don't know. So the liberties they took, I think, from what is a 3-month break is
right.
I would have liked to seen it maybe take place like 3 years later, and they kind of would have said, the Indians did this, they lost that one, and then they made the playoffs and got bounced the next couple of years, and now we're here 3 years later, and they're still trying to get over that hump. I think that would have been a more interesting or more believable timeline. But I also want to point out that, as I mentioned in the first one, Willie Mays Hayes rolled up in that fake Rolls Royce. And this one, Charlie Sheen's character, Rick Vaughn, actually rolls up in a Rolls Royce, which I thought was kind of a fun little throwback. And then what's his name? Willie Mays Hayes shows up in like a big, huge stretch limo. But I thought that was kind of a funny thing that Rick Vaughn showed up in a Rolls Royce this year, whereas Willie Mays Hayes tried to make one. So
who's that? That is our center fielder.
That is our center fielder. Yeah. So, yeah. What about you?
This movie was definitely one of those movies where it tried to rekindle the fire of the first movie. It fell off hard. I won't put this movie in the upper echelon of my top 10. I don't even know if it'll crack the top 10. The Rubisms in this movie are absolutely hilarious.
Rube.
The way that he talks like somebody, and he was from Nebraska.
Was it? I think so. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. I think it was Nebraska. Yeah.
He him and Bob Uecker made this movie. You know, the Charlie Sheen, you know, they're not worried about your ERA, they're worried about your image. Like without your ERA, you don't have an image.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, let's go back to what works. Some things that I found out about this movie, I was going through baseball cards a couple months ago, and I I found a baseball card for Kevin Hickey, and he's the guy that plays Shoop in the movie. So he's the left-handed
Oh,
pitcher.
okay.
And so when I looked at it, I said, this guy looks really familiar. And, you know, it's like, give me the ball, give me the ball. He pitched 6 years in the majors, 81, 82, and 83. He took a break, and then he pitched again in 89, 90, and 91. Pitched for the White Sox as part of his career. Steve Yeager was one of the coaches on the Indians as well, and he played his entire 14-year career for the Dodgers.
Now, Steve Yeager was the Duke in the first one in the major league. He was the Duke, Steve Yeager, and I saw him. I thought he was the coach was he the coach on the Indians in the second one? Because I know he was the Duke. He was the Duke, and I did see his name in the credits. I forgot to look at what character it was, but I did see his name in the credits on number 2.
Willie makes that catch in Game 7. You know, they go up 3-0, and then it's 3-3, and that had never been. I didn't go down that hole either, where it was, if any team had come back from down 3-0 to force Game 7 and then to lose Game 7. But we know the first time in baseball history that it happened was 2004. And we'll get to Fever Pitch in a couple episodes. But Willie makes that catch with his back to the infield, and that's exactly what Willie Mays did. He's going over his shoulder with that catch. That catch in 54 was made against the Indians. And everybody was writing off the Giants, saying that they didn't have it, that they couldn't beat them. And, Willie Mays makes that catch and then has the presence of mind to throw the ball back to the infield. So that was huge. Parkman hit that home run late in the game where he's rounding second and he does this and he does that. It's total Hulk Hogan.
Parkman.
Randy Quaid's character in this movie totally did it for me. They're gonna blow it in the playoffs.
Yeah, they will. They'll blow it.
Yeah, he was great. And getting that fan perspective in the movie just goes to show. There were some parts of this movie that I really liked, but then there were parts of it where it was just like, do I have to stay awake for this? Yes, I have to talk about this. It's just one of those things where you're like,
yeah,
how early 90s B-grade movies got, like it's Hot Shots 1, Hot Shots 2. Hot Shots 2 was pretty good because it was the first Hot Shots I saw. Hot Shots, there was a significant drop off.
Yeah. Same thing with like Naked Gun 1 and 2, right? And 3 and a half, 3 and a third, whatever they called it.
Yeah, Naked Gun 99. So of course, as baseball fans, we know that the 94 season was cut short due to the strike. In that season, as of August 12th, Andres Galarraga was hitting 370. Barry Bonds and Juan Gonzalez had 46 home runs, and Albert Bell had 129 RBIs. Parkman was the best hitter in this movie, of course, but we didn't hear any of his stats aside from he's hitting 900 against Rick Vaughn.
Against Vaughn, yeah. Jack Parkman, if you know, I don't know if you heard it, was previously on Oakland. He was an A. I don't know if you heard
that. Yeah.
Say that. Yeah, I hated him when he was with Oakland. So
yeah, does his little shimmy.
It drives the women here in Cleveland crazy, and then later on, it makes the women here want to puke. That's great.
Soundtrack's a little bit better. You add a little Stevie Ray Vaughan, and his stuff is timeless. Little blues rock, which was great. But any last takes on Major League 2?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out was 2 things here. So Jake, he mentioned he's a 41-year-old catcher. That puts him in pretty rare company. I looked up the oldest catchers in modern day. Sandy Alomar at 41 years, 3 months was the oldest catcher in the modern day era, and Mike Piazza was 39. So, I mean, you're looking at Jake Taylor falling in with some pretty heavy hitters there, some pretty big names there. He's a 41-year-old catcher there, looking to still play.
Didn't play a game in the regular season because he was forced into coaching.
That's right, which brings me to my next point. Pepper, the coach Pepper, he really got a raw deal there. I mean, he was the bench coach in number 1 and, going to be the bench coach in number 2. And I just kind of got looked over like, oh, hey, Jake Taylor, you take over. I mean, Pepper's there. what's wrong with him? I mean, I feel like he had a little beef there. Like, hey man, I've been sitting here doing my time, sitting here being number two, and you just passed me over for a guy who was just on the field. I feel like Pepper has a little gripe with old Lou, with Coach Lou there, but I thought that was kind of messed up.
I did like Lou in the hospital.
Yeah.
Like, I love this British shit. Now I may just move to England. That was hilarious. Demolition Man came out in '93. I had to look that up. So that might
have been actually, well, it might have been right about when they were filming. So, and I think he got a lot of money for Demolition Man. So
I'm sure he did, because he was 1A and 1B with him and Sylvester, and at that time Sylvester Stallone was one of the biggest names in action movies after creating all those Rocky movies.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah, I could see him not wanting to. I mean, the Willie Mays Hayes in the first one, he's there a lot in the beginning. He's really not there in the middle of the first major league. He's really not present. He's like pops in here and there, and then really just kind of comes back at the end. So, I could see where. Well, I mean, I can't see it because it's an awesome. It would have been way better if he was in it. But for Wesley Snipes' point of view, he's like, it's probably not worth my time. I can see him saying that. But it was not fortunate for us. But it would have been way better to have him. But Omar Epps, you did all right, I guess.
I did like Omar Epps in The Program.
There, yeah.
That was probably one of my favorite football movies growing up.
He looks like a much better football player than baseball player. Yeah.
True, especially when you're trying to get Halle Berry.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot she was in that. Oh my God.
She's great. All right, now 8 Men Out. This movie was released in 1988 about the 1919 Chicago Black Sox. One of the books that I'm currently reading that it's taken me a lot to get through is Burying the Black Sox. How there was a cover-up, how the owner of the White Sox did not want anyone to know about what happened during the movie, based on the movie, but the movie is also based on a book. Jeff, what'd you think about this movie?
Great movie. Love the movie. It's really well directed by John Sayles. Very well written. I think every character gets a good, representation of what they were going through at that time. It's everything just felt you were transported to that time. I really just all the details I feel like in that movie were really well done. The baseball scenes were really, really well done. It felt like the actors could really, do what they were doing. Was it David Strathairn? I can never say that dude's name. David Strathairn as it's Eddie Saccott, and he did a pretty good job. I mean, it wasn't like Charlie Sheen. Obviously, he could pitch. I think he pitched in high school, so he obviously looked like a natural out there as Rick Wild Thing Vaughn. But I thought, David Strathairn did a pretty decent job there. Was that character he winked at me? Was that the guy, the pitcher? Is that the same guy? Is that the same? Was that Eddie Saccott?
I would have to look at that again. I don't know.
I have that right now. I'm feeling that it's got to be, right? Yeah, I feel like that's got to be, the pitcher who threw at Moonlight Graham because he winked at him. I feel that's the same guy or the same character. Eddie Saccott.
Knuckles,
and yeah.
Saccott was known as a knuckleballer. So hey, Knuckles, why'd you throw at him?
Oh, but that's him. Quite the different representation of that. Whereas in Field of Dreams, he's a kind of a big, burly, kind of mean guy. And, in this one, 8 Men Out, he's, obviously David Strathairn is probably not bigger than I am. And, and more of a family man. His wife is there and he wants to do this because, he feels he got wronged and he needs money to support his family. So I think it was interesting to see that contrast between those two movies and the way that character was portrayed. So, but, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting dilemma that these players were put in. I mean, they weren't making a living wage. That was kind of their main motivation for it. I think at least for Eddie Saccott there, and who was kind of the one they were looking to be the one, not the leader of it, but the one to validate, I think, their decision, everybody else's decision to do it. Like if Eddie can do it, if Eddie decides to do it, then we should all be doing it because he's, the moral compass basically of the movie. I just, you really do understand where they're coming from in that situation where, they're getting screwed over by this owner who just is making money hand over fist, throwing lavish parties. And, he gives them, nothing, doesn't barely any living wages. So yeah, I thought it was a really good movie. Yeah, what's your take?
This movie is definitely top 10 material for me. It cracks the top five. It's rough for me because you know how it ends.
Yeah.
Um, I read the story. I've read Shoeless Joe about Field of Dreams. I've read uh, Fall from Grace about Shoeless Joe and Bearing the Black Sox, and you know how it ends. You know the story based on history of baseball and how things change with Babe Ruth. But the cast is great. Charlie Sheen is Happy Felch. John Cusack is Buck Weaver. Christopher Lloyd is Sleepy Bill Burns, who pitched for the White Sox in the
Oh,
early 1900s. And then,
okay.
Dad from Frasier and Kit
Yeah.
Mason.
John
And
Maloney. Yeah.
yeah, Strathorn as Eddie Seacott, who is in A League of Their Own, who's Ira Lowenstein. Um, just going back to that scene where, Eddie Seacott, he goes to Comiskey and he's like, you promised me this bonus. Yeah, if you won 30 games. So I went back and looked at his stats on Baseball Reference. He went 29-7 in
Dang.
1919 through 30 complete games in 35 games started. So that
Wow.
means that he had that option, and I didn't see what his year looked like, but 5 shutouts. This one's really weird. 110 strikeouts in 306 and 2/3 innings with a
Wow.
2.48 ERA.
Hmm.
Um,
Well then.
back to the wardrobe. The wardrobe was phenomenal. The soundtrack was phenomenal. It totally gives you that feel of we are in the night, going into the roaring 20s, turn of the century music. If you ever get to Portillo's in Buena Park, that's the same ambiance that they have. It gives you that Chicago 1900s feel to it.
Yeah, I know that place. Yeah, I've never been in. I've had food from there. But I've never actually. I don't think I've ever been there though. Interesting. Yeah, it's
Was there and
what there's that one scene I wrote down where that dummy got thrown onto the field. Was that I wonder if that was that real? Was that a real thing that happened? Do you know?
That may have been a cinematic thing, but it's
Yeah.
not something that I know. There were a couple times in that movie where it was like, you're gonna have to face it. You're gonna have to face the end of this gun if you are ready for if you process.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that I'd read is how naive Shoeless Joe was because he was following guys like Chick Gandil and like Happy Felch and trusting these guys. And then when his wife comes in and she's like, "You may not ever be able to play again, Joe," he's like, "What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
What can I do? This is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. All I want to do is play ball." And it's definitely something that you side with, and you understand how naive he was and how much he wanted to play and what he would do. Look at his series. We talked about it in Field of Dreams. 340 average. Hit a series only home run. It just goes to show you that he had no idea what he was getting himself into, and neither did Buck Weaver. Neither did a lot of these guys. And you kind of understand that he was in a bad spot with that.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of took advantage of him, his naivety and his just not being. I mean, he does come across as not super intelligent, right? Like a simple man, a simpleton, basically. He's a simple guy who just knows how to play baseball. That's really all that he can do. He probably doesn't have many skills, but he can hit a baseball, he can run, throw, and hit a baseball. So, yeah, it was definitely tragic what happened to him, and the way that is portrayed is, just kind of got caught up in it. Went along with his friends to kind of help them out. Well, I don't know if to help them out, but kind of just went along with his friends and what they were kind of telling him, like, yeah, this is what you should do. This is what we need to be doing. And he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I guess that's fine. Seems like he got caught up into it, and they kind of made that reference too in Field of Dreams. So yeah, Shoeless Joe, what could have been, right, for him.
And they
But
take a
also,
lot of his stats. They take a lot of his stats away as well because he had one of the highest batting averages in his career. Some of the most hits in his career. Of course, we talk about Tat Cobb and Tris Speaker, Honus Wagner, and Babe Ruth as being, and of course Lou Gehrig as being some of the best players of this era. But because of what happened in that season, they won the World Series in 1917, 1919. It's like, okay, and then even in the trial, it's like, oh, you guys could be recognized as one of the greats, like along
yeah,
with Babe Ruth.
the greatest team ever, they were saying, yeah, at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. The ending. I was watching this with my daughter too, and we had just watched Field of Dreams, where they basically talked about this and laid everything out. And I was explaining, kind of filling her in the gaps that weren't there, and just expanding on it because she was asking about that team. And I guess I didn't realize, so I watched this again, that they were actually, not, I guess, not found guilty or acquitted of cheating, basically, like with the courts. So I thought that was interesting. Me and my daughter watched that. We're like, wait a minute, hold on. I thought they were found guilty of this, but found innocent of it. But then baseball was like, the new was it Kennesaw Landis, the first, or he wasn't the first commissioner, but the new commissioner, right?
He was the first official commissioner,
He
because
was the
what they
first
did is they
commissioner.
had
Okay.
a commission, which was 3 separate people who would decide on the rules or make decisions. And it was American League president, National League president, and then another third
Uh,
party. And at that time, the National League president was the owner of the Cincinnati Reds. And so that became a
conflict
little bit of a
conflict of
conflict of
interest there,
interest.
yeah. So that's why they got that Kennesaw Landis. So, yeah, I guess I didn't realize that they were found not guilty of that, and then baseball decided, no, we're gonna ban them anyway. So,
Yeah, if you were caught gambling on games, you are expelled from baseball.
I mean, talk to Pete Rose about that, so,
Yeah, and
which is interesting. Oh, go ahead.
that was something that, as I read through this book, in 1924, Shoeless Joe went to Chicago with Buck Weaver to get back pay
Mm,
because he never gotten paid. He, signs a contract, says everything's going to be okay, and he never gets paid. And a lot of the stuff that's in this movie, so Hugh Fullerton, the older gentleman that's a reporter, he was the one that broke this case, and he had to move to New York. The other guy that he was with, who was a reporter, quote unquote, that's Christy Mathewson.
oh,
Yeah,
I didn't
and
know that.
so what they would do back at this time of the century is they would use ball players and they would have stories for them, but they would use like a different name called
Mm,
like a ghostwriter. And so that was something that this book turned me on to, was knowing how many players that they had that, I could give you my story and then you can write it under your name, but it's actually me that's,
yeah.
maybe I don't know how to write at that time, which we saw that Shoeless Joe didn't know how to read or write. So he was definitely at the mercy of his peers.
Yeah. Whoever wrote it, yeah.
No. All right. Anything else you want to talk about in episode 3, Jeff?
I think that hits everything that I had. Oh, one thing I wanted to actually point out go back to Major League Two real quick. They mentioned the attendance in that movie. I forgot to mention this. I wanted to bring this up. 1,412 was before they started going on their win streak. 1,412. That is even less than an A's game. So, they were really doing poorly when you're only drawing not even 1,500 attendance. So I thought that was
Yeah,
kind of,
because the Expos were drawn in the 6,000 and 7,000s before they moved out of Montreal into DC,
yeah.
and there were a lot of things that went into that as well. All right, episode 4, we're going to talk about A League of Their Own and The Natural. But one thing that I did want to mention is Santa Monica is doing a Movies in the Park, and it is Little Big League on August 11th with Tony Todd, one of the actors in this movie. Mickey Scales reached out to me personally, said, hey, I'd love for you to bring your kids down. So I'm gonna take the kids down. We're gonna check out this movie. It's been a while since I've watched it. When I first met Tony, I had said, man, I know you. How do I know you? And then I started thinking about Runaround Sue. And so he's
Mm.
gonna be there. Tickets are free. All you have to do is reserve a spot. August 7th, and we will be sure to post a link.
Wait,
So
what day? August 7th or 11th? Which day?
tickets go up August 7th. The
Okay,
movie will show on August 11th.
got it. All right,
Awesome. Thank
sounds
you,
good.
everybody, for joining us. We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Jeff, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, sir.
All right, man. You too, Nick. Good talking to you.
Thank you. Episode 4, A League of Their Own and The Natural.